Today we have Umut Salihoğlu. Umut Hocam holds a PhD in English language teaching and currently teaches at Bursa Uludağ University. He previously worked as an English language teacher at a Turkish public school, served in the Turkish Army Forces as an English instructor, and taught English language and Turkish culture courses to college students in the US as part of a Fulbright program. He has published many articles in international journals and authored books and book chapters. His research interests include teaching English for specific purposes, pre-service teacher education, teaching practice supervision, corpus linguistics, and the applications of data-driven learning in language classes. Wow, very impressive.
Thank you very much, Hocam. That's very kind of you.
Really looking forward to listening to you. And this is the Engage Zoom series 68. And the topic is learning vocabulary in a foreign language. It's a very hot topic. Vocabulary is always hot, right?
Has always been.
Oh, yeah. Let me leave the screen to you, Umut Hocam.
Thank you very much, Defne Hocam. Thank you very much for the great introduction. Thank you. I appreciate your introduction. So have a great night, everyone. I personally would like to greet each and every one of you and send you my best wishes. First of all, I'd like to thank Aydan Hocam for everything she has made for us. Even though she is right now at the hospital, she made this event possible, and I hope that she will really soon get well soon, really. So thank you very much once again. Just as Defne Hocam has mentioned, I would like to share my 2 cents on the learning vocabulary, which is a highly researched area actually, but is it the reality in the classrooms? So is the research being applied to the language classrooms or in any setting? So I hope to give you some extra details that I have come across through my years of research. And I also would like to share my experiences with you. So, but first of all, since this is a Turkish gathering and I'd like to offer you some lemon cologne and I have some candies for you, even though these are virtual, maybe once you get to my room, I don't know, anytime, you're going to get these physically. So once again, thank you very much for being with me at this time of the day. So I think I will be able to share my screen. It's been a while since I've used this Zoom application. And so here we go. Right now. Okay. Defne Hocam, do we have the full screen? All right, thank you very much. That's very great. So once again, the topic is learning vocabulary in a foreign language, but we'll most probably be talking about the English at the foremost, but I'll be dealing with other languages as well in my examples. So first things first, I would like to personally show you this picture. I don't know, I'm sorry, I didn't ask you for your permission, but you are our angel investor and you invest a lot in education. So I just wanted to say this from the bottom of my heart. And I believe everyone in this room will have the same emotions for you. So once again, thank you very much and hope you'll get well soon. All right. So here is the introduction. Grammar and vocabulary and other skills in the language. I wouldn't think of another way of starting a vocabulary presentation without quoting Wilkins, who has been quoted thousands of times. So everyone knows that without the grammar, very little can be conveyed, but without vocabulary, it is impossible to express your feelings, to talk about statements, right? And so, but the importance, the attention the vocabulary deserves has not been given to it throughout the years. So I would like to quote one of my beloved professors, Mrs. Meral Öztürk. Right now, she here on the slide, she said that if you'll excuse me. Here, okay. The widespread assumption was about the vocabulary. If you take care of grammar, just like in the grammar classes at schools, vocabulary would take care of itself. And this was the assumption for many, many years. And in some certain cases, it still is the assumption. So as a result, our learners are largely left on their own to learn a large amount of vocabulary, which is a big burden on their shoulders. And so what can we do to help them overcome this barrier? Now, since you all know, since you're all related with the language teaching, some of you might very well know about this book. I would like to talk about the vocabulary myths people hold in their beliefs, and we have those beliefs. And these myths were actually listed by Keith Falls. I believe this was a book written in 2004. You can find it, so it's still available. We have got some myths, and I personally would like you just to browse some of these items so that you can see if these myths are valid or true for you. For example, if I say vocabulary is not as important as grammar or other areas, some of you might say no, but this is a common belief, right? And when we use word lists, people say that, oh, this is just going to be rote memorization. Those are using those lists as mere sources for learning. So these myths have actually been proven wrong, or research has shown us that these were actually the myths, and there was no scientific support for any of these ideas. So some teachers might say that, for example, the myth 4, the use of translations to learn new vocabulary should be discouraged. However, we know that in some certain settings, a careful amount of, a well-designed amount of translation would help the learners and foster education. So I just wanted you to show these myths, because when it comes to vocabulary, everyone has ideas, but it is important to see whether those ideas are only personal beliefs and intuitions, or are they being supported by the research findings, and is it the reality in the classroom? Therefore, I just wanted to list those for you. Okay, now, one of the most important things about teaching vocabulary, I believe, is what to teach first, right? But in our limited time frame, I personally decided not to talk about what to teach, because it is a very, very huge field of research, and we have to spend a lot of time to talk about that. So just for the sake of keeping my talk at a shorter length, I wanted to talk about when to teach vocabulary first. We all know that vocabulary is involved in all aspects of language. You cannot get rid of vocabulary when you talk of pronunciation, reading, speaking. It's everywhere, because it's the building block of any language, right? So you have to be careful about this, and it might be necessary for you to teach the same items over and over again at multiple points. Therefore, we come to a point where we talk about planned teaching versus the incidental teaching. Let's assume that you have got a reading passage, let's say. So like in a traditional reading class, you would start by teaching your learners some of the items, some of the target vocabulary in the pre-vocabulary teaching sessions. And you say this word it means that. You can give them the definition. You can use realia. You can use, anyway, like antonyms, synonyms. There are many ways to introduce the vocabulary. So this is called the planned teaching. But when it comes to the vocabulary needed at the moment, in those magic moments, you are actually referring to the incidental teaching of the vocabulary. And I personally believe your talent comes to prominence when you're incidentally teaching the vocabulary. As a teacher, you might have forgotten the meaning of the word. If you're working with advanced level learners, that is the case, and it can happen. So we've got two cases here, the planned teaching of vocabulary and incidental teaching of vocabulary. And in our field, in the world of English language teaching, there has been debates about how to take care of the vocabulary. Some people believe that you have to teach the vocabulary in a planned way, and some researchers believe that if you give learners resources to, let's say, to read, to listen to, and if you can expose them to larger units of language, the vocabulary will take care of itself, they say, and they call it the incidental learning, and so that will be the incidental teaching for us. So now, first of all, I would like to talk about the 4 strands. Now, if you are talking about the vocabulary in the world of ELT, in English language teaching, or I believe like teaching any language, because I have seen people referencing the work of Paul Nation, and he's a prominent researcher in the field of vocabulary, Paul Nation, and he offers 4 strands. So what does that mean? What does it stand for? He actually believes that like in 2001, 2008, and like for over 40 or 50 years, he has proposed people that there should be a balance in any language course. And in terms of vocabulary, every course should be well balanced in terms of these 4 input and output models. So I'm just going to go over them and I'll try to give you some examples as well. Okay. All right. So the meaning focused input, meaning focused output, language focused learning, and fluency development. So what do they stand for? The first one. Once you start learning a language, think of your days when you were a baby. So you were exposed to the language by your parents, you have listened to them, and it was kind of a receptive performance. So the main focus in any language course in terms of vocabulary, when you focus on the meaning, is on understanding from what you listen and read, right? From the receptive skills, as we label them. So what kind of activities can a teacher carry out? The teacher can talk about the extensive reading. As we all know, you may read parallel texts like staged readers, or you can read similar texts. For example, if you're interested in tourism, you can go and buy books that talk about the same topic. Or if you like political science, let's say, you may be reading from different authors and you may be learning vocabulary from those different sources. And this will be a good example for extensive reading. And I know from the beginning of their childhood, people love to listen to stories. And if it is something that you like, it's going to be transferred to your second language learning journey. And watching media. In our day and age, the social media, the media resources are, I believe, are unlimited, right? With a simple internet connection and with a simple device, you can connect to the world and you can watch thousands of hours of videos on YouTube, right? So I'm not that old personally, but I could say back in my day, we didn't have YouTube. And when I say I'm older than Google, some of our students are saying, really? So back in the day, we didn't have many sources, especially the listening sources. The videos were limited, but right now, world is full of sources for the exposure to the language. Now, if we talk about meaning-focused input, what can we do? We need to meet some certain conditions. Now, if you wish to focus on a balanced course, you need to talk about the content, and the most of the content your learners will be exposed to should be already familiar to your learners, right? And it is important that only a small proportion of unknown items are in your text, whether it is spoken or written. So in order to create a lively atmosphere or to motivate your learners, your content should be interesting, and the input you provide them should be motivating. For example, if your students love to talk about video games, try to give them what they're looking for. Now, the second strand in the meaning focused is the meaning focused output. Now, the meaning focused output is, as you can see, it's productive. It's one of the productive skills. Our learners are supposed to produce the language that they have been exposed to, that they have worked on. And when they talk in conversations, and when they use their language in the classrooms, and for example, when they make requests, for example, the simplest request would be if your students are late, when they knock on the door, if you have a habit of asking them, if they have, for example, some of the learners tend to ask for the permission in their own native language, right? And when they knock on the door, some of my teachers used to tell us to go out and ask it in English to be allowed into the classroom, right? So in order to make requests, they have to use the vocabulary productively. And if your learners can keep a diary and write about their day, about their life, about their routines in life, that will be a great source of meaning-focused output. Now, what should be the conditions to talk about those things? So, once again, the topics should be familiar to them largely, because you can easily talk about one thing that you are already familiar with. Let's say when it comes to political science, I'm not an expert and I would not be able to talk much. Maybe I should give my ideas in 1 or 2 minutes. But if you want the conversation to proceed further, I'm not the person to talk to, I should say. So largely familiar topics are great. And the learner's main goal here is to convey their personal message. Therefore, the number of unknown items should be kept at minimum. And we should offer them plenty of opportunities to produce the language they are looking for. Okay. Now, so the plenty of opportunities we said. All right, the next slide is going to be, okay. Do I get it? Okay. Okay. So, and the language focused learning, the third strand that we have talked about. Focus on form focused instruction, deliberate study, and deliberate teaching. You have to know your target vocabulary beforehand. You have to know what your learners need, and you have to work on the vocabulary just by not by saying, oh, the vocabulary will take care of itself. No, you do it deliberately. So by studying the pronunciation of the word, by studying on the spelling, vocabulary, and grammar and discourse, you do it deliberately and you focus on the form. What kind of activities can be done for this third strand? For example, the pronunciation practice. Since you know the needs and the tendencies of your learners, let me give you an example. If I know that I'm working with Turkish speakers of English, I am most probably going to be paying attention to interdental sounds like 3 and 3. So I may be giving them some minimal pair exercises. Or I can easily tell them that what is your name with the v, Turkish v sound is not the correct pronunciation. So I can deliberately ask them to match the sound with the spelling. So that will be a nice pronunciation practice. And I can use substitution tables and drills. You must be familiar with those type of tables. So there are some options in the first table, like he, she, it, and then goes to the cinema, he goes to the market. So just by providing them the substitution tables, we're replacing the vocabulary. And by chain drills, although they may be sounding a little bit of behavioristic approaches, every learner needs to practice what they have learned, even though it may look like simple imitation and simple chain drills, right? Simple drills. Okay, and it's always a good idea to ask your learners to keep their own cards, so they can write the words on their cards and they can write this the translation in many settings. So they can learn from vocabulary cards, right? And translation, which has been deemed to be really problematic, and actually some scholars back in the day have deemed it as a sin to use translation. Think of the direct method. You can never translate into the learner's native language. And thankfully, that understanding has, in many parts, left the ELT classrooms. Okay. What certain conditions are needed to make sure that we can focus on the language learning? Deliberate attention to language features. We have to tell our learners, these are that, these are that. They have to deliberately learn them. We have to teach them in that manner as well. So when they process the language features, they have to do it in deeper ways, right? So once I talk about the vocabulary, we all know that we talk about the depth of vocabulary and the breadth of vocabulary. Let me give you an example. Now, when I first used the word moving, right, moving, I would personally think of a moving company, right? When I wish to move my stuff from this house to another house. The word moving, however, if I use it in a different context, if I say, the movie was very moving, I'm talking about my emotions. I can say, the movie was very moving. I cried at the end of the movie, right? So the depth and the breadth of vocabulary. So our learners have to process the data in deep ways. And of course, some of you must have heard of the 1960s, the Pimsleur method, right? The spaced, repeated attention to the same features. So it is, unfortunately, as language teachers, we know that it is impossible to learn a vocabulary item just by 1 or 2 exposures. Even though you may be exposed to the very same word in 1 week, if your teacher does not make sure that that vocabulary is being repeatedly introduced to you, you may not be able to learn that vocabulary. Or if you do not deliberately study vocabulary, once again, you might be forgetting that real soon. In this manner, I guess people say that you can forget things in English very, very quickly. Okay, so, and the fourth strand, okay, so it's about becoming fluent. That's the fourth strand. So since we talked about all of the 4 strands, the fundamental understanding is there should be a balance between receptive and productive, and deliberate study, and like automatic speech, like fluency. So in order to become fluent, as a teacher, you should make your learners, you should make them ready to learn items. And as a learner yourself, you have to be ready to use the language or the vocabulary items that you have already learned. So this way we can make the best use of what we already know, because our aim in vocabulary is to receive and convey the messages of the parties, the interlocutors, I should say. What could be the typical activities? Now, if you read in a fast way, the speed reading will somehow improve the learner's way of pronouncing items. So there will be, we will be strengthening, so we will foster their spelling recognition skills as well, right? The word recognition skills. And by pushing them to skim and scan the text, we ask them to recognize the word forms real quickly, and then they carry this ability to a higher level. And as you all know, repeated reading, just by reading the same passage over and over again, you get some automaticity. And then the next time you read a similar passage, you easily recognize that, oh, I know this word because I've seen it before, right? And 4, 3, 2, repeated retelling. Some of you must be familiar with this method. in this method. For example, you give me 4 minutes to talk about my hobbies and likes, right? So, for example, I like going skiing, blah, blah. And then my teacher asks me to repeat the same dialogue in 3 minutes. I have to paraphrase what I have said. I cannot just speak faster. It's impossible. So, and for the last time, my teacher says, you have to tell the same message in 2 minutes. Right? So I have to pick another vocabulary. I have to improve my paraphrasing skills, and I have to maybe prepare myself for a simpler speech. And games and games and games. So the research supports the idea that games can be very influential when you're learning vocabulary. If you're interested, I will be giving you my email address. I've got many references for this. I can share them with you. Okay, and listening to easy stories will help you to become fluent. Okay, so far we have talked about the 4 strands. Okay, I believe you're enjoying your night. So anytime we talk about the balance, we have to be careful about this. Sometimes you may not be able to balance the things through the course of time, but it's always a good idea to keep it in your mind that there has to be some balance. Okay, the next slide. I believe you may know this person, right? This is Dr. Mehmet Öz, and he has a great TV show, Dr. Oz. Okay, so why do I have his picture here? Because I wanted to familiarize you with the physician, because my next guest will be someone you know. Okay. Now, as a language teacher, promise me that you are going to keep the balance in your courses. Okay. Otherwise, I will call this person. Now, I believe you have just recognized her, right? Canan Hocam is right here. And she's telling you to use the 4 vocabulary strands. And she says, you know her style, the way she speaks, she says, use it always. Keep the balance. Okay. Now, she's kind of the way she speaks. And if you do not keep your promise, she's going to say, you have not used the 4 strands, right? And you know what happens if you don't follow her suggestions. Here's what happens. She will come and haunt you for the rest of your life. She will always say, use them, keep the balance in your courses. All right. So when we talk about vocabulary, we will always be talking about the context, because the context is going to give us an understanding of the meaning of the word we're using. Okay. And we will also be talking about, the context will give the meaning to the word, actually. That's what I'm trying to say here. Now, in my next slides, sorry. Okay, right here. Okay. If you are familiar with the vocabulary used by soldiers, the military vocabulary, you might know what cover me stands for, right? So this is not everyday vocabulary, but the context gives the meaning to these words. And the soldier who is saying that cover me is not most probably, I think you have seen this meme on the internet. This soldier is not probably saying cover me, right? So the context allows us to elaborate the meaning of the vocabulary and understand it. So when someone says cover me, I guess this would not be the case. And if you're in the army, of course. Now, I'm going to share one of my personal stories. This story I have not encountered this case, but later I tried to find that story. Now, since you all know, I'm right here in Bursa, and I've spent my childhood here in Bursa. So one of my English language teachers, actually my mentor during my school practice, told me that when she was walking in the downtown area. In Bursa, we have a street called Cumhuriyet Street, right? The Republic Street. On the street, she said that she saw a sign and she was so surprised. So you all know many shops have these kind of old shop signs, right? So in this next one, I'm going to ask you for your ideas, okay? So please take a look at this. Suppose that you're walking down the street and you saw this shop sign. Does it make any sense to you? Right, so you're walking down an old street. So there are many stores who are like selling many different stuff. So do you understand what Her Boy 10 stands for? So, I mean, of course, have you read it as Her Boy 10? So that's the point. So the context is going to give us the whole meaning. So that's my point. So actually, I was able to go and see the real sign in front of the store. And that store used to sell metal products. And it was not Her Boy 10. You know, it was an old plate, old sign. It actually said, Her Boy teneke bulunur. So you will be able to buy every size of metal sheet for your needs. So the vocabulary gets its meaning from the context, as you can see. I've got one more thing for you, right? Nowadays, everybody needs a hug, right? So we should be telling our learners that they should also be seeing the written forms and they should learn the spelling of the word forms. So if you take a look at this one says, I need a hug, but suppose that you focus on the picture. I've just covered it, but it was written in very small fonts. It actually is, I need a huge amount of money. So just by giving your learners these kind of exercises, you can make them see the similarities and differences between the word forms. Batya Laufer, a prominent researcher in the field, calls these as scene forms. Now, our learners assume that they know the word, whereas the word looks very similar to a word they know, but the meaning is totally different, right? So in this context, that it would be a problem. Okay. Now, I've got one simple question, but I can get your opinions on that, but I'm pretty sure about that thing. That would be great. $1 million would be fine for me too. Okay, so about the contextualization, teaching vocabulary in a decontextualized way. So my point here is, your teachers must have asked you to do it because my teachers did. And when I became a teacher, I said to myself, shall I use the same strategy to teach vocabulary? But here's the deal. Now, if your teacher asks you to write down the new vocabulary items, write down the new words, would you be happy? Were you happy as a student? No context. So let's assume that the word is butterfly. I used to write butterfly. The first one was correct, but my 10th word was buffer to lie. So I didn't pay attention to spelling because all I wanted to do was to finish it up and go watch some television, right? So no context, write the word 10 times. I personally wouldn't like that. Here, what I would like would be, I would use the word in a meaningful context. And depending on my level, I would be very much delighted to write meaningful sentences according to my level of proficiency. I would do that. Okay. So right now, I am going to be talking about the sources for finding good vocabulary. And I will be touching on the corpus work, right? And I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the word corpus. But in basic terms, a corpus is a collection of spoken or written texts. Okay, so you collect authentic data. As teachers, I've heard people say that in order for a successful communication, everyone needs the authentic language materials. Now, just go out and read the commercials, read the advertisements of the private language schools in Bursa or in your city. They say that we are teaching the real language. I believe what they're claiming is that they are trying to provide their learners with authentic usage, right? Authentic language materials. So they say we get rid of the boring school material. So, but where to look for the real examples is a problematic case. So you cannot always find appropriate levels of vocabulary. So here, Corpus Work comes in handy, right? If you wish to provide your learners with good quality of input, text from better sources, or if you want to prepare better teaching syllabuses or course books like syllabi and course books, and if you're looking for language reference books such as dictionaries, you should make use of corpora. Now, some of the technology geeks, if you are good at technology, you can easily learn how to use them. And if you're bad at technology, there are many YouTube videos who tell you to use these following tools step by step. So Kong, Wordsmith, Sketch Engine, and Skill. Just keep these names in your mind. Or if you cannot keep it in your mind, just write me an email. I will share my email address and I can give you more resources on this. What do these tools help me to find about vocabulary? Here are some examples. Now, let's assume that I have got a stage reader, right? And I want to learn how many words are there in the book that I'm using and how many unknown words are there, because it's really impossible to count each and every item in the book physically, manually. But if you have like a PDF version, you can convert the images to text, excuse me. So you can make use of these tools. And for example, they show me the most frequently used items. And it says, oh, there are, the word English is mentioned in your book 822 times. So this is, the analysis is realized just by a few clicks, that's it. And here I'm showing a picture from one of my former published chapters. I was actually interested in the lockdown. Thanks to God, we hope that we are out of this madness, and we have had really hard times. So let's assume that your learner wants to learn about the adjectives that can be used with the word lockdown, right? We have been through it. So if you just analyze the sentences from the internet, from the authentic sources, let's assume that you get the data from the Washington Post or the Times, the journals, the newspapers, the videos. So you can just enter the data and click on a few buttons, and here we go. The most frequently used adjectives with the word lockdown are the nationwide lockdowns. You remember those? And which verb is used with the word lockdown is shown on the screen. You don't have to check the collocation dictionary. If you wish, you're more than welcome to do it. But if you need some quick responses, so you can say, oh, the government implemented a nationwide lockdown, right? And someone imposed a lockdown on our city. So, and as you can see, the complete nationwide lockdown is also another native speaker usage. And you can easily analyze that data if you're interested. So you can always create word clouds by using the data you have in your hands, okay? You can always do it, and that will be really beneficial for your students. And they can see some of the items that are frequently used in that text, or some semantically related data vocabulary will come up through your analysis. Okay, so right here, I have analyzed a text from an arts book, let's say. Okay, so art is the largest word because it has been the most frequent word in my text. So that may be useful for me. Now, how will corpora help me? I mean, corpora sounded like a big bit of geek stuff in our literature, but it's so simple nowadays because you have got the free software, and with the advances in technology, it takes about 3 to 4 seconds to get the analysis. So you can find the language structures, you can learn about the multi-word units, you can learn about verb-noun collocations, adjective-noun collocations, because your learners are going to need to use those collocations. Let's assume they are going to become engineers. If they don't know the adjective that is used with a liner, so a liner in engineering means it's like a plastic cover you put on soil in order not to let the chemicals trickle down the soil, right? So they have to know, as an engineer, they have to know, for example, as a technical word, an impermeable liner is the correct word, right? They may not be knowing the English equivalent, even though they may be knowing the Turkish one or the one in their native language. So corpora is going to help you in great ways. Now, what can you do to introduce your learners to collocational activities? We all know that teaching our learners the chunks is a lot more meaningful than teaching them the single word units, right? Because their native language might be using the collocations in a different way. I always give the example of driving and riding. In the Turkish language, when you ride a bike or when you drive a car, you use the same word, sürmek. But you don't drive a bike, right? So that would not be the correct collocation. So this is called the spaghetti activity. So you just draw arrows, and as a simple activity, your learners just follow the arrows, follow the lines, and they try to find the correct words. And then you introduce them to the concept of collocation. And just as a very traditional activity, you can use this, a very simple vocabulary activity, which is a puzzle, right? A crossword puzzle, sorry. This puzzle will help us in great ways because all of the answers that we're looking for are collocations. For example, you can say, my heart is beating, but you need to say, when you're so excited, too excited to talk, you need to use the verb pounding. So my heart was pounding. Just by answering this puzzle, just by doing this puzzle, without ever realizing, your learners learn how to use a structure. And suggestions, once again, so they can complete the exercises. They can fill in the blanks, just like they do in their textbooks. And for some technical vocabulary, you can give them some target collocations with definitions. Excuse me. And they all can match the definitions with the term. That will be a nice activity without ever, they will be learning the meaning without ever realizing that they're working on collocations. Okay. And now I also want to tap on one more thing, the cognates. And I'm pretty sure you know what cognates are. They are the similar looking words. So historically, some words have been borrowed from other languages, right? And some words that have not been borrowed from other languages looked like the words that have been borrowed. So when we talk about cognates, for example, telephone. In Turkish, we say telephone, and in English, it's telephone. So it is just a cognate, and we call it a true cognate because the meaning is totally relevant and totally the same. So in terms of cognates, we will be talking about true cognates, false cognates, and partially true or false cognates. And the cognate status. So let me give you some examples. Okay, now I would like you in the chat box, tell me, is television a true cognate or a false one? So is the meaning in Turkish and English the same? True cognate, thank you very much.
True.
Thank you. All right, people are here with us, Defne Hocam and Aydan Hocam. We're here as a large group. Yay, thank you very much. Yes, this is it. So this is a true cognate. We all know that television means the same thing. Okay, how about fabric? Is the word fabric the same as the way we use it in Turkish? So fabrika, is fabric fabrika? Nope, it is not. Thank you for the answers.
Just the pronunciation same.
Yeah, the pronunciation sounds almost identical. That is right. So when I say fabric, oh, it sounds like fabric, fabrica. So my learners will assume that it is the correct word, whereas fabric is a piece of cloth, right? I mean, my shirt is made of fabric. So I know that it is not the correct item. It's false. And helicopter, that is totally the same, right? I'm not even going to ask you. And here I have got the next word. I'm not going to pronounce it. Okay, I'm not going to pronounce the next word, but I would like you to take a guess. Now, if I read it in a different way, which is similar to Turkish, that will be a different word. But if I read the word totally in English, if I pronounce it with an English pronunciation, is it going to be a true cognate or a false cognate? So the word is abide. Yes, it is a false cognate. But I've had many learners, when they see this word, you know, you must have had the same experience. When you read a paragraph and you don't know a word, you just nativize it, right? You foreignize it, actually. You think that, okay, so this person was abide, right? So that's the case. But it's abide, it's not abide, and that's a totally different thing in Turkish. It's not a monument, right? It's totally different. So that is the cognate status, if I may wish to talk about. Now, about this topic, my beloved teachers, yeah, definitely, abandon would be a nice example as well, right? Thank you very much for the nice example. Okay, so if you are interested in the data about the Turkish English cognates, my esteemed colleague Levent Uzun and I, we have carried out some research back in 2009, and we were able to expand it and use the information and added some extra information. And we also had a publication in 2021, and it's about the Turkish English cognates. If you have further questions, you can just download these two papers, and the list of English Turkish cognates are already available freely on the internet if you just follow the links that I can provide you with. So if you further wish to learn about this, by the way, the cognate list was not created by the researchers. It was not created by us. It was created by the university students who were learning English as a part of, as a requirement of their general English language course program at the university. So the users have informed us about the number of Turkish English cognates. So we've created the corpus, and we've done some analysis and taken out some of the numbers that were really low frequency, so on and on. So if you're interested in finding further information, I'll be there for you. Okay, so the cognate status is that one, and here we go. To summarize, to sum up, I think I've done a lot of talking tonight. Sorry about that. Once again, I would like to quote the statement of one of my beloved professors, Mary Lester. I would like to state that if you are, and if you're in the need of learning to teach vocabulary, right? And please read this quotation. Learning to teach vocabulary is a never-ending journey, right? It's never-ending. All through your professional lives, you will never cease to teach, of course. You will be learning new ways of teaching vocabulary. But it depends on one condition. If you keep on looking, right? So always look for different ways, different strategies. Keep the balance in terms of meaning-focused input and output activities and the language deliberate study and the fluency activities. Otherwise, Canan Hoca will haunt you, right? Just kidding. So that would be a nice thing to follow the new findings of research, and it's always one of the best ideas to listen to experienced teachers on the way they teach about vocabulary. Always try to find new ways out, okay? Because all we need is science, and science and the research is going to support us, and we're going to match it with our intuitions, personal beliefs. That's the only way to advance. That's the only way to go forward. Because this is something we have learned from our greatest leader, and we all know that, I would like to state his quote, we all know that the true mentor in life is science, and only science, that I should say. Okay? So I would like to end my talk by a quotation from Romeo and Juliet. In Act 4, Scene 3, Juliet says, she says, farewell, God knows when we shall meet again. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much for taking your time on an exhaustive, at the end of a tiring week, maybe. And thank you very much for being with me. So here is my contact information. Here is my email address. You can always send me your queries through my email. And if you're using social media, of course, you can always follow me on Instagram. My username is Umut Salihoğlu. I believe you will be able to find me easily, right? So that's it, I guess. So I'll be stopping my presentation.
Hocam, thank you very much. Vocabulary is so very enjoyable, especially, I mean, my personally, I like the idea of working with cognates a lot, especially the false ones, you know.
Yeah, and your example was a nice one, Defne Hocam. Thank you. So
yeah, my students keep on saying abandone olmak, abandone oldum.
Yes.
Which they mean is they were upset or they were confused or they want to mean something else. And
but they don't know the real meaning of the word.
No, yes. I don't know how that word turned into this word in Turkish. Is kind of some kind of, I don't know, it had a long way to go, I suppose. It's a weird.
Maybe it has been used in different contexts by someone who was popular, right? And that usage came into it became like a habit for many people. Thank you very much for your nice words, everyone. Thank you. And Defne Hocam, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
So I guess it's time for you to take the stage and about the question session.
Oh, yes, I didn't see any questions. And there are some comments in there. Everybody's thanking you.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you, everyone. I personally would like to thank each and every one of you for being here. Thanks a lot.
And I'd like everybody to think about, if you have any questions, could you please put them on the chat box, and so that we can see. I noticed that you talked about spaced repetition.
That's correct, teacher.
Maybe the way this came out when, I mean, we all knew repetition was good, you know, to learn
Mhm.
something, to better to be able to, you know, remember
Mhm.
later on. But I came to learn about this spaced repetition from a friend of mine who was working on her doctorate studies. I
Mhm.
just didn't know exactly what it was. And when I learned it, I said, I should be able to use it. I should use it in class as well. Would you
Mhm.
like to expand on it a little bit? I don't know if everybody knows how it works, so it might
Um,
be useful.
So I mean, I would not like to get into very much detail, but the spaced repetition, just as you might support my ideas. So there are some time intervals that have been scientifically proven for some certain situations, of course. I mean, in some certain learner variables, this may change, but according to the human learning theories, if you repeat some words at some certain intervals, like in 3 hours, 7 days, or like in 2 weeks, if you carefully design the way you repeat it, I believe, do you remember the exact time, Sojam?
Not the exact time, but I may not be right, but this it was like the first time would be um, uh, the time lapse would be close at the beginning, but
Mm-hmm.
then you make it
And
larger
you
and
will be
larger and
expanding
larger.
the intervals, right?
Yeah,
So
so that
let's
you
assume that you
retrieve
have learned
the
it
word.
today. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Something you learned today. I think our teachers knew about it because they said, when you go back home, study this material. So it was like a spaced repetition. And 2 weeks later, do you remember this word? Like 2 months later, do you remember this word? So, and this is a good point. I should be doing more reading on that. So I should remember those things. And I'm just going to note it down.
oh yeah, okay.
This is an
No, I
important
don't
point.
remember exactly the
Yeah.
timing, but the
Mhm,
idea was to get the students to repeat the new word
mhm,
um, at a longer after longer lapses of time, so that you retrieve the word. Because what happens is the more I mean, you can the following day and the week after,
mhm.
you remember fine, and then you start to forget, and that's
That is
when
right.
you start to try to bring it back again, you know, like you retrieve it and it becomes live again in the mind, and then you leave for a while, a longer period of time, and then you retrieve it, and then it tends
Mhm.
to hold on somehow. That's the
That's right.
idea, right? But I
Yeah,
don't know
that
exactly
that's absolutely true,
time
Hojam. And the
the time
whole
lapse.
extensive reading model, actually, the extensive reading model actually depends on this fact, right? The more you read about political science, the more you read about sport, there is a high chance of coming across the same vocabulary. But you as a teacher have not planned the spaced repetition, but your learners are going to be exposed to those words in similar contexts over and over again. So that will be helping your goal of the spaced repetition.
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So I was going to ask a question about translation. What kind of words would you, or what level would you recommend us to use, perhaps translation, to help
Um,
vocabulary learning?
yes. Now, since we are sowing the seeds of learning about a language, I would assume that doing many translation at an earlier age would inhibit the learners from seeing the real nature of learning English, right? So we all know that they are not metalinguistically developed, and their metacognitive skills are different, and translation requires a great knowledge of your own language, native language, right? Without ever knowing how you paraphrase or how you translate the noun clauses, adjective phrases, right? So you have to know your language well to be able to translate one thing, even if it's done for the purposes of learning, right? So I would assume that at younger ages, simple translations would be just for gaining time, for explaining very abstract terms, right? I'm going to give you my experience on that. I was trying to explain the meaning of poison to my primary school students, right? They were at the 5th or 6th grade when I was working for the government. So what would you do for the adults? You would draw a skull, right, on a bottle and show it to them and say, don't drink it, this is poisonous, this is poison. And once I drew the bottle and showed the bottle to the primary school students, they said to kill that. And like I have received 10 different answers, but none of them was the poison in Turkish. So, and they were unable to do it. And some of them said, oh, bottle, a liquid in the bottle. So, you know, sometimes the abstract terms are hard to explain, right? In those cases, I would assume that if you wish to go on further, if you wish to gain some more time, I guess those would be the only points that I would translate at younger ages. But with the adults, if the translation of full phrases would help them understand the underlying structure, I mean, if it would help them understand the syntax of the sentence, I would go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let's check the chat area to see if we have any other questions. I see a lot of comments and thanks again. Well,
anyone, any questions?
Any questions? You might want to unmute yourselves to pose your question.
Actually, yes. I guess Erdan has given the snake example. Erdan, I have talked about the snake and they said, is it biting? So they would still not, some of them would still not get it. So in some certain situations, you get a deadlock, right? Everyone would be looking with puzzled eyes and sometimes it doesn't work. So you just give them the translation or, you know, you just stop explaining. So depending on the level of your learners, many different things can be done like that. Okay, so can we teach abstract words with contextualizing method? I believe, Mariam, you're talking about the definition or explanation, right? Yes, okay. So if I should say, of course, if the term cannot, if you don't want to translate it, I mean, you cannot translate everything. So you can give a circumlocution, right? So you can talk about similar terms and you can explain it. Sometimes they may get it, sometimes they may not, but it would be an extra exposure to them. They would be hearing extra words when you provide the definition. So the monument would be exactly the same in Russian. Oh, I didn't know that. I'll be there. Oh, I guess we might have borrowed this from Russian. I didn't know that.
Possible.
Abide, abide, but it's totally not the abide in English. We all know that it's the different. It has got a different meaning.
Monument. I'm a native speaker of Russian, and I know we are using in Russian monument just exactly the same in English and Russian monument.
A monument. Oh, I see. All right. So that's the point. Okay. Oh, I just thought it was about the abide and abide in Turkish monument. So you are using a true cognate then, right? The same word, television, television in Turkish.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sedat Hocam asks a question. Would you recommend any digital tools or apps for a vocabulary teaching?
Sedat Hocam, we are working on the development of an application tool. You will just be the first user, I promise. So actually, any digital tools or applications, it depends actually on your aim, what kind of vocabulary you wish to learn. Recently, I have come across an application developed by Istanbul University, right? And they have developed some applications for teaching technical vocabulary for like the blue collar people, right? For like not the engineers, but the technicians. And if you're interested in learning vocabulary, I can strongly recommend you the wall screen, and you can just watch the videos by watching wall screen. YouTube is always a good source, right? And if you just type in learning vocabulary in your app market, you will come across some of the applications, and they use spaced repetitions, right? They will be repeating the same word because they keep a log file of your user habits, right? So they will be giving you the words, right? The wall screen hocam. That is perfect. It's a superb tool, that's right. I agree with you. And if you're interested in learning about the tools, everyone in the room, I got, like, if you just write me an email, I got a long list of items, and I have actually categorized them in terms of the user interfaces and what they can offer you. So just write me an email and I'll be delighted to share that information with you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Sedat Hoca''s question, Mariam's question. Let's go.
Great.
Abstract words. I don't see any others. Do we have any other questions? Please write them here now, or shall
Now
we?
or never.
Now or never, yes.
Yeah, you can always, if you're hesitant about asking it about your question right now, just write me an email. I'll be delighted to reply to your message. So thank you very much, Defne hocam. That has been a wonderful night for me. And I don't know, hocam, it would not be possible without your efforts. And Defne hocam, thank you very much for doing this great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Umut hocam, I would like to thank you very much for INGED and for myself. I enjoyed it, and it was a good brush up and polish of teaching and, in fact, learning vocabulary in a foreign language. And I learned a few different methods and techniques as well. Thank you very, very much for your work.
Thank you very much, Hocam. I appreciate your help.
Thank you. And now we need to close. It's tiring, perhaps. You may be tired. Let's enjoy our kids.
Yeah, we deserve a good sleep.
And or maybe if you want to go to sleep, you may as well do that. So we'll hope to see you in another INGED meeting. I'm closing the session now. Thank you very much and good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Take care.